We're going to start to see the breezes start to pick up late today and then certainly start to ramp up by tomorrow morning. So I wouldn't be surprised if certainly by the middle of the day tomorrow, we start seeing tropical storm force wind gusts, and then the winds only pick up from there.
Right. I'd say to be safe, by tomorrow morning, we could already be seeing those tropical storm force gusts near the coast for places like the Sunshine Skyway. So if you do want to use those bridges, I would definitely use them this evening before they close.
And Stacey, you did mention the 2 p.m. advisory. We did just receive that. So let's go ahead and show you what's happening here with Irma, and it still is a Category 3 hurricane, winds of 125 miles per hour. Now, if you're, again, just joining us here, that is down from early this morning. The storm has been interacting with the island of Cuba. In fact, it did actually make a landfall, but now we're starting to notice a little bit more of a northerly trek with this.
Yeah, we've been watching that eye, the center, and we noticed probably within the last hour and a half or so, a quick northerly jog. You can almost see it move a little more northwest. So the National Hurricane Center is still saying this storm is generally moving in the direction of due west at 9 miles per hour, but you do know a little bit of that northwesterly turn that we're seeing as it skirts the northern coast of Cuba.
Now, of course, the forecast track, very, very important. We know that this track is very crucial in terms of exactly where it comes. We've seen the overall trend here as this track has been shifted off to the west, and we woke up to that this morning, and certainly not good news. So let's time this out for you. By Sunday morning, this is 8 a.m., just after sunrise here, and we're talking about the potential of a Category 4 hurricane coming into the Florida Keys.
Exactly, and while the storm has weakened currently to a Category 3, the thoughts are that as the storm moves to northwest and the eye gets back over, the warmer water is still not a ton of shear, that this will strengthen once again back into a Category 4 as it approaches the Keys. So they are bracing for a major Category 4 storm that's going to take a direct hit there Sunday morning.
And even at that point, through the day, we'll start to get the outer bands from Irma. It's just a very large hurricane, so we'll start to feel the effects early on. Then Sunday evening rolls in, and we're talking about the potential of a major hurricane making landfall in southwest Florida. Now, this forecast track, you'll recall, last couple of days has been getting pushed farther and farther to the west, and that unfortunately is not good news for our area, because now we're talking about the potential of a hurricane coming right over Tampa Bay.
And you can see on the current track there as potentially a Category 4 storm. At this point, it looks like somewhere around the Fort Myers area, possibly even up towards Sarasota, we could see this storm making landfall again. Still not an exact track, because we've been waiting for that northerly turn, and it's all dependent upon when the storm makes that turn. So we're still looking at the whole cone, but at this point, that is the current thinking, that somewhere near the Fort Myers, as we head over towards even Sarasota, we could see this making landfall again.
But either way, with this track, conditions start going downhill after sunset on Sunday. We start to notice the potential for hurricane force winds in our area. Now, thankfully, this will be a steady moving system. So by 8 a.m. sunrise Monday, this system is sitting just north of our area. So this will traverse from south to north through the Tampa Bay area, our viewing area, and then continue to accelerate into the southeast, but still maintaining at this time Category 3 strength. So yeah, there's a real possibility that this will stay a major hurricane sliding over our area even after it potentially makes a landfall.
Exactly. And at this point, some folks wondering, when the worst of it will be. So the worst winds, the heaviest of the rain, the most intense part of the storm is going to be Sunday night into the first part of Monday. Through the day on Monday, we'll start to see some things improving in terms of winds, but we could still see when those winds kick in behind it, we could still see some coastal flooding.
I mean, if you're bearing down in your home or any shelters in the area, it's going to be a rough night. It is. There's going to be howling wind, again, hurricane force winds, and gusts, coming close certainly to major hurricane strength here. So we're certainly not ruling that out. We expect widespread power losses with that kind of wind. That's the kind of wind that can do structural damage, bring down trees, bring down power lines as well. So most of us expect to wake up without power here on Monday morning, and then from there it moves on. So let's take a look at the spaghetti plots here. This has been very critical the last couple of days. We've been noting this westward trend with the computer models.
Absolutely. You'll note that just a few days ago, these spaghetti models were alignment on the East Coast. Now we're looking at that alignment closer towards right around the West Coast, and a lot of these computer models bringing this in right around the Fort Myers area. Some folks asking, could this still change? Yes, nothing is absolute. This is a forecast, and that's why we do still have the cone that you see. But at this point, it does look increasingly more likely that we will see this storm make landfall southwest coast of Florida and then continue up through the Tampa Bay area.
Okay, we're going to go and switch on over and actually, switch over to a Max Defender 8. There it is, and show you what's happening right now. We do have rain coming down across Citrus and Hernando County, unrelated to the actual hurricane itself. There is some heavier rain, certainly on the East Coast, that's getting caught up in this stronger easterly flow that's developing. But South Florida right now, these are the outermost bands of Hurricane Irma, and you can see the entire southern portion of the peninsula up in red. That is a tornado watch that is in effect all the way to midnight tonight. And we do anticipate, as the center of Irma starts to close in on South Florida, this tornado watch will likely be shifted farther north across central Florida. It's just a reality when you deal with landfalling tropical systems. There is going to be a risk of tornadoes.
It's definitely a great reminder. Of course, we are in hurricane mode at this point, but tropical systems very often produce many tornadoes within these bands. So that's why you need to, of course, you'll be inside in a safe shelter anyways, but stay tuned with the latest updates and any potential warnings. Even in some of the outer bands, we could see some of those
You
warnings.
can get gusty winds and, again, the threat of tornadoes. Now, we've tapped into our radar network, tapped into Miami Doppler, and we're able to see the eye of Irma after it's spent that long time trekking across the Atlantic. Well, here it is. You can see the area of yellow and red on the north side of the eye. That's the eye wall where we have the strongest winds. And this eye, what we've noticed, Lee, Julie, and I have been really sort of contemplating the movement here, and we were clearly able to see that in the last hour there was a clear northerly component to the movement. So it's at this time virtually paralleling the coast there. Some of those barrier islands on the north side of Cuba, right in the middle of the eye at this point here. So bringing them heavy rain, very gusty, strong winds. But as this continues on that track, eventually it will clear the Cuban coast and start moving into that very, very warm ocean water there. That's where we anticipate this to strengthen. We're going to talk a little bit more about the advisories here with Irma.
And also the effects as well. Now, as this track has continued to trend west, something we've become increasingly more concerned with is storm surge because of the direction of the winds. These amounts are definitely higher. So you can see in some places we could see 3 to 6 feet of storm surge, especially as you head south toward the Manatee, Sarasota coastlines. 6 to 9 feet of storm surge, possibly even higher in spots, depending upon the exact landfall of the storm. And in the Bay, we could see some of these storm surge totals over 6 feet as well in Tampa Bay, which is why some of those evacuation zones, have been added.
And a few minutes ago, Stacy ended up mentioning the idea that, could this potentially stay out over the ocean, over the Gulf? And yes, that is actually a possibility. We can't rule that out. In that scenario, we would see lesser wind over the land, but again, the threat for storm surge would increase, and that's why the exact track of this at this point is so crucial. So these numbers are subject to change based on new forecasts released from the National Hurricane Center, that forecast track. So these numbers will be adjusted all the way up until landfall, and even as the storm is making landfall through the duration of the storm, we will continue to update these storm surge totals because we know how important this is. But also realize once the storm moves north, the wind coming off the Gulf of Mexico is still going to be quite strong. So any surge that we do get from this storm, the water will likely have a hard time retreating quickly because it's getting pushed back onto land. And also, that risk of coastal flooding will continue through Monday and into Monday evening as well. Also, higher than normal tide cycles. That's going to be a big issue as well going forward.
Absolutely. The surge is going to be worse when we do see those high tides, especially, again, like you mentioned, on Monday. So be prepared for that. Here's kind of a bottom line wrap up for you at this point. So the main impacts of Irma, the timing. Sunday afternoon through Monday, especially the first half of Monday. So you need to be in your safe place by Sunday before the hurricane force gusts are anywhere near us at this point. So very early in the day, preferably probably even tonight if you are able to do so. Winds 70 to 95 miles per hour, but we are expecting higher gusts. Remember, this is expected to make landfall potentially as a Category 4 storm near the Fort Myers area on the current track, which would lead to some gusts over 100 miles per hour in parts, especially on the eastern side of that eye wall.
And that's highly dependent, again, on where this thing comes ashore, if it does make a landfall. And that's the same with the rainfall amounts here. We've sort of painted a broad brush of 6 to 12 inches, lowest near the coast for for now, higher as you go east of I-75. But again, if this storm takes a jog back to the east or a jog back to the west, these rainfall totals, these wind speed expectations, and storm surge potentials will all change. And speaking of that surge, generally, south of the bay, we're expecting higher surge amounts. North of the bay, even as you head into the coastal Pasco, Hernando, Citrus County, we're still expecting, at the very least, a minimal surge potential just from, again, that strong onshore flow, even after the storm makes landfall here. So the bottom line here, again, this is the last day to really get all of your preparations done. The weather, yeah, we'll have some scattered storms this afternoon, but overall, anchoring down your furniture, or if you've been on the fence of evacuating, you need to make that decision right now. The sooner the better. And
absolutely. And with that westward track, if you are in an evacuation zone that has been evacuated, that is due to the surge, and that is the most dangerous part of the storm, which is what we're more concerned about as that shift has turned more west, as opposed to just coming up the center of the state. So definitely heed those orders and listen to them.